On the road to autonomous cars, the automotive industry paradigm is shifting from a focus on raw engine power to in-vehicle experiences. Trusted by OEMs and media companies alike, XPERI brings entertainment, safety, and comfort to new heights, leading the charge to recreate the in-cabin as a third space. Our solutions are built on best-in-class technologies from XPERI brands DTS and HD Radio, with core products including the DTS AutoStage Global Hybrid Media Platform, immersing drivers and passengers in personalized, high-quality audio and video content. HD Radio, the most successfully deployed commercial digital radio system in the world, offering more stations and crystal-clear sound without a subscription. And the award-winning DTS AutoSense in-cabin sensing driver and occupancy monitoring solution, deployed at the edge and privacy-centric, is improving safety and experience for all occupants. With autonomous vehicles evolving consumer expectations, our top minds are rapidly innovating to create the in-cabin experience of the future and redefine it as a sensational third space. Drive extraordinary with XPERI.
And thank you for joining us on day 4 of Radio Week. Wherever you are in the world, it's lovely to have you with us. We are talking about that particular solution and what it's doing to revolutionize in-car analytics. This is the crazy thing about radio, is that audience sitting in the car in morning drive and afternoon drive has traditionally been our most valuable audience. They're leaning in, they're listening, they're attentive. We can charge more for them. And yet what we knew about them came from research methodologies that were 18th century. Now, I guess that's probably going too far back, but it was recall. And we really didn't understand how people listened to us in the car, how they behaved, what they liked. There was so much that was unknown. And that, fortunately, is about to change thanks to XPERI, our sponsor. It's brilliant to have all of you here today to enlighten everybody from all over the world who want to know more about what this means and how this revolution is possible. Let me tell you, Joe D'Angelo, Senior Vice President, Broadcast and Digital Audio at XPERI, is here. So is christian Scholt, the Chief Digital Officer at RTL in Germany, and Pierre Bouvard, good to see you again, Chief Insights Officer at Cumulus Media in the US. And both of you in the US, this is pretty early. Glad you've had your coffee, washed your face, and ready to go. It's good to see you guys. Joe, this is what you've called a revolution, because for the first time, insights and data in, I think, is it real time or close to real time, is possible for radio owners. And that's never been possible before. Tell us more about what this means and what it is.
Sure. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I'm very excited to talk to you about AutoStage and get the perspective of the impact of the analytics that we're now able to deliver to the industry from both Pierre and Christian. So if we can start the slides, what I thought I'd do is just give an overview of what is DTS AutoStage, because some of you in the audience may not be aware of it. But it is the first global hybrid radio solution designed to work everywhere around the world with all broadcast standards, whether it's CDR in China, DAB in Europe, HD radio here in the States, or analog radio around the rest of the world. So next slide, please. We launched this technology, this platform in 2020 with Mercedes. And as I said, it's a hybrid radio technology that combines the power of broadcast radio with the enhancements that we can deliver over the internet. And because of the way the system was designed, it ensures that broadcasters retain editorial control, but that we are also able to constantly understand, evaluate, measure how the driver is engaging with radio, what they're listening to, what events, audio events and visual events are presented to the driver, throughout their morning and afternoon commute. So next slide, please. So this is what it looks like in the Mercedes. Mercedes was our launch partner. And I think the first thing you can see is this amazing, rich carousel of content choices. The objective around AutoStage was to present radio in the same light as a pure play digital service, where there's consistent, rich access to programming. Programming can be easily discovered. Programming can be easily branded so that people can find what they want to listen to really at the touch of a button and with a glance of the screen. You see two different representations here in London for the over 100 FM and DAB radio stations that are available. Next slide, please. Not only does the system aid in the discovery of radio and the selection process, but it also provides rich, engaging metadata around the programming that is being broadcast at any point in time. This is where we blend the over-the-air service delivery with the IP enabled content delivery. We use a lot of our TiVo experience and our own music metadata backend to enhance the user experience and to really create a rich multimedia experience for the driver. One of the things we're most proud of is we are also connecting the audience with content in a very different way that radio never has been able to do before, not only with visuals and rich metadata around the artist, but now also song lyrics. We are the only licensed global provider of song lyrics in the automotive space. We worked with all the music publishers to get this permission. And we really believe we're raising the profile of the craft of songwriting by including this in the dash. Next slide, please. And what's very exciting is the auto industry is really starting to embrace this at scale. As I mentioned, we launched in 2020 with Mercedes. In 2021, Mercedes started to expand throughout different vehicle platforms. But 2022 was really a breakout year for us, where we dramatically expanded the number of brands, the number of vehicle models that supported the technology, and we expect that trend to continue. And why that's important to this industry is it's going to dramatically increase the measurement opportunities for us. We're going to be able to better understand your audience and better enhance the radio experience across a variety of brands. Next slide. So how do we do this? We basically work directly with broadcasters to get access to their station information, their streams, their dynamic information. And that content, that information really is the heartbeat of the DTS AutoStage platform. And it's the measurement of that heartbeat, the measurement of delivering that data into the vehicle that is the foundation of all of our analytics and metrics. Next slide. So I mentioned this is a global platform, and it truly is. There is no other platform like this in the world. This platform is free and open to broadcasters. There is no charge to participate in this platform. And as you can see from this slide here, we have vehicles literally around the world in about 147 countries connecting to our service every time the radio is turned on. And we are enhancing that radio experience for over 88,000 radio stations around the world. This is truly revolutionary, and again, provides the foundational context for the analytics. You can see in Germany, our highest density market, the most users, not surprisingly, are in Germany. And in the last 12 months, we've delivered over 600 million discrete pieces of information to vehicles in Germany as they're listening to radio. It's really, as Pierre said back in October in New York, this is big data for broadcast radio. Next slide. So we'll start to get into this now in the conversation, but I wanted to show you briefly what this looks like for a radio group. In this case, SWR, one of our partners in Germany, you can see we can not only know where all their audience is listening, but also give them an indication of the scale of listening to each of their stations. And not only their stations, but also their transmitter sites. So if you look down this list, you see a multiple entries for SWR3, their most popular radio format, that's distributed over a number of DAB multiplexes and FM transmitters. We're able to tell them basically where their audience is. Next slide, please. We're also able to show exactly how much audience is listening to each of their radio stations, and then provide them a representation of their overall share of listening in the marketplace. Next slide, please. And this is one of my favorites, where Pierre has allowed us to share one of his stations in Syracuse, New York, where you can actually see a heat map of where the audience is throughout the day. In this case, this is a snapshot of the entire day of the audience for this Syracuse radio station, but you can see there's a slider across the bottom where you can actually look by day part. And what you're seeing here is our broadcaster dashboard. This platform will be launched at Radio Days Europe in March. And again, it's free and available to every broadcaster around the world that integrates with us. Next slide. And to participate, it's actually very simple. We need 3 pieces of information from broadcasters. We need your static information, the stream URL to allow people to listen outside of the coverage area for your broadcast signal, and then the live data. Again, that live data is the heartbeat. That is how we measure the engagement with the audience. And we're really proud that we have tens of thousands of stations around the world already collaborating with us on this platform. If you haven't joined, please do. It's free. There's a portal where you can register your stations and really take control of everything that you're delivering through our system to the dashboard. So that's it with the overview. Hopefully I've provided a good foundation and context for everything we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Just to let all of you that are watching know that you can send your questions through. Well, I'm going to ask a couple of them, but I'm not going to get all of them that you're interested in. So feel free to use the platforms, whichever you're watching from, whether you're watching on the RedTech.pro site, whether you're watching on LinkedIn, wherever you are, send your questions through. We'll flash them on screen and send them through to our experts, the expert panel, who'll be able to answer them. Then I want to get on to first the trivial. I think my daughters enjoyed the fact that I never knew the words to any Michael Jackson song that I sang in the car. Those days are now gone because you're going to provide the actual words. It's a pity. It's a sad day in our family because it used to create a lot of mirth, right? No more laughter because we all know what he's saying. I never could figure it out. But on to something serious. HD radio, it works for that. DAB Plus, it works for that. What if you're in a market that doesn't have those technologies yet? Is this too early for them? Too soon?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this system was designed, you saw that world map. A lot of those countries do not have a digital broadcast strategy in place and an infrastructure. And we work with analog AM and analog FM radio stations. If the broadcaster shares information with us about what they're playing, we are able to enhance that with our own TiVo music metadata, or take content that they may be producing for, say, their web presence and deliver that into the dashboard. So it's absolutely not dependent on a digital infrastructure. It works a little better, but it is not dependent at all.
And what about the screen in the car? I mean, there has to be some level of sophistication.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are seeing screens are really becoming standard. I mean, it goes all the way back to in the US when they mandated backup cameras. You started to see screens come in as a matter of course. I think it'd be hard pressed to really find a vehicle for sale, at least in the US or Europe, that did not have some sort of visual display capabilities.
Yeah, it's changing everywhere. Absolutely. Let me get on to you, Pierre. How does this change the game for someone like you that goes out and sees marketers and advertising agencies and so on? You used to have a particular conversation 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 weeks ago, well, before this was introduced. Is the conversation different now when you go in and see the biggest advertising agencies in Madison Avenue?
Well, I think this is really revolutionary for radio. Television has had set-top data, smart TV data, but because 2/3 of all radio listening occurs away from home, the radio industry has never had any kind of big sources of tuning data outside of the home. So this is why this is really revolutionary. In the US, 85% of Americans are reached by in-car radio in a week. 45% of all listening occurs in car. So what this does right away is inspire confidence with advertisers and agencies, meaning that there is, large amounts of data available on tuning. And I think down the line, the opportunity for attribution will present itself, meaning to be able to say, here are the vehicles that were exposed to this ad. Here are the vehicles that were not. How many visited this retail location? So the opportunity for attribution and proving that radio can drive retail traffic, I think is very exciting for agencies and advertisers.
Yeah, I want to take up that that sort of heat map, if that's the right terminology. So forgive me for using the wrong terminology here. But that heat map that you showed of your station in Syracuse, that gives you an idea where a reasonable number, I don't know how many, of your audience tends to drive, commute, move around, which means that anything in that map area, retailers there, businesses there, service providers there, are all suddenly opportunities that maybe weren't considered before. Is that what this sort of leads to in a sort of practical way?
Yeah. So if you think about it, one of the most popular targeting dimensions is location. I want to email people that live near a retailer location. I want ads to be delivered to people near a retail location. And what we've had in radio historically is zip code data, meaning this is the home of the person. Here is the tuning and the radio stations that are most listened to around that person. But only 1/3 of listening occurs at home. And so we've never had the opportunity to say, let me show you where my listeners go during the week. So the ability to sit with a retailer and say, here are your locations in my market. Here is my audience and their travel and trip patterns. And so I can deliver my listeners that are regularly going to near your location. So this is revolutionary. This has never been able to be documented, to show trip patterns and where radio listeners are versus retailer locations.
Well, we're going to get in deeper, but I want to bring Christian in. Christian, when you look at all of these possibilities now, how does that change? Oh, I can hear, is that rain where you are in Germany? Okay, there's some other sound coming through. Maybe it's the sun. It just, when it
really,
bursts.
it's the sun. No, it's not raining. Surprisingly, it's not raining at all. I'm sorry for that. I don't know what it is.
No, it's okay. Maybe when solar bursts, when the sun comes out in winter in Germany, it actually comes out with a sonic presence as well. Good for you.
You have to capture the moment. Yeah, that's true.
So Christian, what does this mean for programmers? When you look at all that is possible for strategists and programmers beyond just sales, because I'm going to go back to Pierre and we're going to get deeper into the sales conversation. What does this mean when you think about content?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just from a personal point of view, I find this heat map fascinating because I spent my vacation in that area last year, and maybe I'm part of that heat map, so maybe I'm one of the dots. Yeah, I mean, it opens a complete new room. A radio listening in the car accounts for, depending on the market, between 20 and 50%, in some markets even more, of the overall listening. And it used to be a blind spot for programming because you just knew, maybe with hindsight, that people were listening, but you had no clue when exactly and where. And combining those dots, it's fascinating because you can then create and optimize your content based on a ton of additional data. And that's the dream for every programmer, of course. Yeah.
When you think this through, are there practical uses, perhaps those that are watching us want to know? Are there, and Joe, you can come in on this, because obviously you said there's an opportunity for people to know what songs are being listened to in the car. Would a station, let me ask this, would a station programmer know whether there was a moment when someone switched away? They may not know where they went, but would they know that a listener who was present, and I know it's all anonymized because it's GDPR compliant,
Right.
would they know when listeners move away from their particular station? Is that part of the possibility here?
Yes. So again, if you remember that the heartbeat of the measurement is the metadata associated with a piece of audio. So if a station is sending us song information every time the song changes, we can measure the audience flow throughout that day part. So you can see the aggregate size of your audience from song to song to song. This data is made available basically 24 hours later. To answer your earlier question, this is not real-time data. It takes us quite a while to basically aggregate and process all the data. So it's on a daily basis. But what we can also do is not only look at a single station's behavior with their audio programming, but if you're a radio broadcast group that has multiple stations, we can look at how an individual song is performing across multiple stations. So you can see, if a song is aging out maybe earlier than you would expect and you're losing audience when that song comes into rotation, you can take a proactive decision. But yes, the whole idea around this dashboard and the analytics is to work with the industry to provide meaningful tools for programmers, GSMs, and management. And this will be an evolving platform. Even though we're launching in March, we're learning more, we're getting more feedback from individuals like Christian and Pierre about where we should take this platform in the future to make it even more powerful for them.
Brilliant. That is truly revolutionary. It's never been possible, as you said. Pierre, back to you around the conversations that will continue to emanate from this. And again, I think a lot of our viewers who are encountering this for the first time, unlike you, you've seen it, you've played with it, you've had a chance since, I think, when it was launched at the NAB in New York. What are you saying about how, if you were to give advice to account executives, salespeople, how are they integrating this into their conversation as they go out and see advertising agencies? Do they mark up for it? Is there a pricing difference that's now possible because of the value of this? Let's get into the weeds around this.
Right. Well, I think there's two important considerations. One is that that enhanced measurement inspires confidence. So, depending upon the country, there are varying levels of sophistication of audience measurement. This system, the DTS AutoStage, does not replace any of those systems at all. But what it does is it enhances, it complements it, it supplements. So I think for sellers, just the fact that this data exists and the fact that it can be shown to an advertiser, it inspires confidence. It's one thing to say, oh, people listen to radio in the car, but to be able to say, by the way, these connected cars are monitoring, minute by minute tuning, and we know we have data on what's happening in the car. Well, that inspires confidence because I'm used to knowing that, Facebook is kind of measuring what's happening in different digital media platforms. So the fact that we are now measured in electronic fashion in the car without having to show anybody any data, that definitely inspires confidence. And I think just being able to show retailers or local advertisers, the flow charts, et cetera, it just makes them realize like, okay, I can feel good about this medium. So I think there's a lot of perceptual value. And I think the earlier topic about targeting geographically, again, if I know that you can prove to me that your station travels in and around my retail locations, that inspires confidence. And I think a lot of the innovation that's happened in radio for sales folks has been selling other digital products, streaming, maybe selling social media. What's exciting about this is innovation to our core business, to our actual, over the air broadcast, the fact that we can measure this. The other thing that I think is interesting is that it focuses attention on what's happening in the dashboard. We're going to make our stations look visually better in the car. Title, artist, album art, name of disc jockey, and the ability to maybe put some information about the advertising that's run. So when the ad is running over the air, maybe the name of the advertiser can display in the dashboard. So I think the notion that this is it's enhancing radio's visual presentation in the car, and therefore that makes it better for the advertiser. I think that's also an important observation.
So Joe, this one's for you. When a salespeople in a radio station and programming people at radio stations look at this, is there a back end that they're receiving information differently? So is it different for salespeople, different for programming people? Is that a step that's coming so that the way they take that data and make it valuable? There's this old saying, right, about data being like oil, but unless it's refined, you've heard that. Yeah. It's worth nothing. It's crude. I mean, are you seeing that as a next step, or is it already there on the back end?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say we're already there. And I think, as I mentioned, this is going to be a platform that is evolving over time. But what you will see is our first effort to meet the needs of, a general manager of a radio station, an owner, someone involved in, the operations and the business side, and putting tools in place that have value for both programmers and sellers. It's a very collaborative relationship with the broadcast industry. We've had to educate the industry so they understand why they have to change certain behaviors. For example, it's very important now for the producer of a talk radio show to provide segment level metadata. So as they move from topic to topic, they don't have necessarily the same heartbeat that a music station would have. So if they create that content, create those descriptions around the radio station, then we can tell them more about their audience. And what you'll see in March, I believe, is a very solid phase one, right? We're going to give very meaningful information. And we've already seen it. When we put it in front of broadcasters, there are 1,000 questions, and there's a wish list a mile long. Can I get this? Can I get that? And what makes it unique, but also a challenge for us, is we're balancing our contractual obligations to broadcasters, our contractual restrictions with car companies, as well as the regulatory framework around the world that deals with privacy and personally identifiable information. So when you take all of those into consideration, it really is an art on how we're going to navigate through this, present data to the station where they learn about their audience, are able to take action, and ideally build a much stronger business and longer listening sessions with the audience. But you'll be impressed in March. We're not stopping there. There'll be another kind of upgrade already planned for the NAB show in New York in the fall, which is going to take a kind of horizontal view of the industry for network and syndicated programming. So there's a little tease for what's coming.
And don't forget to mention the Red Tech Summit, right? For those chief executives who get to be there, you're going to actually have live demo, have vehicles on site. People are really going to see this in action, which is going to be amazing. But
we'll show the whole system end to end, where a station can ingest with us, see their content flowing through, go out and sit in the car, listen to the radio station, and then come back and see the analytics the next day. So
yeah, brilliant.
Very exciting.
Christian, to you, so you're already obviously deeply involved in terms of the analytics you get out of and the metadata you're getting out of all the digital listening moments that your audiences are involved in, whether it's on the app or various other devices. That sun is so strong we can barely see you, Christian. So it's okay. It's okay. Tell me how once you start to haul in this data from a sufficiently large scale or decent scale of your audience, how do you see a marriage between these, and what do you see emerging in terms of a story that you're building?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a kind of a daily challenge, of course. As you said, you really have to work with this data. I mean, I think with this technology, the revolution is that you actually that you can enter a room where no data have been available yet, and now you really reach that last mile in the car. That's the fascinating thing. But then it's about normalizing data in terms of getting ready for use, especially in the content department, but also for other people involved. What we usually do is that we try to identify certain KPIs. I mean, quite a traditional approach, but sometimes the sheer volume of data is just too much to really work with it. So we would focus on certain KPIs, and then would look at it also not in real time, but usually a bit delayed. So we'd aggregate either a week or sometimes even on a monthly basis. And then we incorporate the data in content development, also in product development. A lot of it is also valuable input for the further development of our digital products, especially geodata, especially everything that is related to use cases. And this is a live proof of all of our use cases. And then we incorporate into the typical work structure. But it's a challenge, because there are really granular data available, and to make this useful is often to dense it a bit and to really focus on KPIs.
Joe, back to you. There are some markets where big radio operators are also significant purveyors of purveyors. I wonder if that's the right word. Nevertheless, they do a lot of podcasting simultaneously. Now, when they're sitting with your technology in the car, will they, during the drive times, be able to see analytics related to both their FM and if someone switches over to their on-demand stream or whatever they're doing on demand? I mean, how does that work?
So AutoStage was named AutoStage intentionally because the idea is that we are presenting a platform for a variety of media formats in the car. First and foremost is broadcast radio. What we have done, though, is designed the presentation layer, the user experience, to enable the driver to stay in the radio environment, get access to additional content and programming offered by a broadcaster without having to leave that radio experience and go to, say, an app, go to CarPlay or go somewhere else to get that alternative content. So the way we enable this with broadcasters is they, in general, will create a unique link for whatever the on-demand content is, whether it's a catch-up programming or podcasts, that we will present to the driver during that listening experience. And the driver can simply select that, much like they would tune to a radio station, have that audio experience, and the broadcaster would know, because of that unique URL, that that was delivered to the vehicle, it's exclusive to the in-car experience, and it originated from a broadcast radio engagement with DTS AutoStage. That make sense?
Yeah, it does. And if it doesn't, obviously, those of you that are watching, you want to ask the question and say that again, Joe, or I don't understand this. Feel free to send your questions through. We'll obviously flash them on screen, and the experts are here to talk about it. Now, while this is sponsored by XPERI, it's not an advertorial. So in other words, we're allowed to ask hard questions and throw in some curveballs, right?
I just need to add something, but not a hard
question. You want to throw in a curveball? Good for you.
But the opposite, yeah. I mean, really the level of data and the depth of data that is available to stations is outstanding. Yeah? Because what the broadcasters usually complain about is that they don't get enough data from distribution partners, and it's a constant battle and a constant. Yeah, I wouldn't call it a war, but it's really a hard fight to get significant data, and this is what radio stations can get from AutoStage. That's really, I mean, you have to put this into perspective. It's very unusual to get this set of data.
Yeah, and I think what's really driving that is we fundamentally have a different business model.
Yeah.
A lot of platforms that are in the business of delivering media are doing it so that they can measure and monetize the audience at their discretion, right? We're seeing that around the world with a variety of platforms. We fundamentally don't do that. We look for partnerships with radio stations to deliver this content and solve a design and a service challenge for the auto industry. Radio is fragmented around the world. You have really robust DAB plus stations. You have very, quite frankly, old analog radio stations that may not even have an RDS encoder. And so you have this variability of radio stations around the world that impact the end user experience in the dashboard. And what our system has done in collaboration with the broadcasters is normalize that user experience around the world. And what that means for our car manufacturers, they can design one radio, they can ship it around the world, and they can be confident in a common, reliable user experience for radio everywhere. And that has huge value to the car industry.
So before I throw the curveball, I want you to think about this, Pierre, and then I'm going to go back to Joe. Can you imagine objections when you take this out to advertisers? And what would those be? And then I also want you to think about how you'd get around those objections. I mean, there might be people who say, well, hang on a second, this is not data at scale. I get data at scale from Facebook. I get data at scale from Meta, Facebook, Google. Right. This is small fry. I mean, it's a possible objection. You can say that you're happy to speak about it now, or think about it, and I go to Joe. Yeah,
we've thought about this. Look, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the cable industry. When cable began 10 years ago to mine tuning data from the set-top box and from smart TVs, there were some legitimate advertiser objections. One of them was, well, the type of cable system can skew the audience profile. So for example, a fancy TV set, that kind of the data that you're going to get is going to be skewed to rich people. Mercedes has an upscale profile. So we are coming into this with eyes wide open, and we're saying, look, the connected car is not representative of everyone in a particular country. Okay, they're newer cars, they're nicer cars, so they're going to have a profile. But we're going to admit that and say we recognize that this is not representative. That's why you have audience measurement. That's why in Germany you have the MA, or you have Nielsen or whatever that has a very representative panel. So that's one of the issues is this representative? And over time, I think it will be, because when you take Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, and Mercedes, and then a major EV manufacturer, over time, it's going to start to get representative. Another issue that TV deals with is anybody in the room. So you have all this beautiful data. How do I know somebody's sitting in the room? And well, studies have been done, and that says that 20 to 30% of the time, your TV ad is playing to an empty room. So you kind of have to know that going in. But here's the fantastic thing about a car. There is no car going 60 miles an hour down the highway without somebody in that car. So automatically we know that we're not going to have this issue of the empty room syndrome. Anytime you see data, there's people in that car. So that'll be, I think it's going to be really the sample representation that'll be the biggest issue. But I think the argument is, look, audience measurement today comes out how many times a year in your country? Twice, 3, 4. This is going to come out weekly, monthly. So the frequency of data, the large sample size, I think overcomes objections about sample representation.
Good answer. You didn't even need to pause around that. Well done. Joe, so here's another one. Why in the world, when you're giving this away free, and it is clearly a game changer for the industry, how come the rollout hasn't been faster? I mean, I see the world map and I see lots of flat spots and I don't get it. Because, if I was still running a radio station in South Africa, for example, where I was, I would be saying, hey, I want this. I'm in.
Yeah. I think it's probably a couple things. It's awareness of the platform. We're still a relatively small team trying to get the word out about what the capabilities are, how to get involved. And then there's, the persistent chicken and egg thing where, you ask a broadcaster to do something, but we don't necessarily have the install base of vehicles to make it a high priority. If you think about what broadcasters are, how they're being pulled for, smart speakers, apps, websites, smart TVs, there's a lot of demands on broadcasters to innovate and to make their content available on a variety of platforms. So I think we're at a point right now, and I was very encouraged. Like when Pierre and I spoke in New York back in October, we still only had Daimler, Mercedes launched. Since that time, we've launched with a large domestic EV manufacturer in the US on a global basis, and all of the Hyundai Kia brands. What's interesting about that is they were not traditional factory installations of new technology. The way those car manufacturers deployed this system was with over-the-air updates, basically vehicles that were in the field that were manufactured going back as early as 2016 can be upgraded, and in some cases were automatically upgraded with this new technology. So we went from a relatively small global install base to multiple millions of vehicles literally in 60 days. In one night, we upgraded over 200,000 vehicles around the world. So to get back to broadcasters, I think the time is now, right? We have the install base, the vehicles are around the world. The data platform is coming in March, so you're going to get immediate return on your technical investment of working with us. So that is really why we are doing events like this, doing the Red Tech Summit. We'll be at Radio Days Europe, is to really get the word out and make sure the industry understands what tools are available to them at no cost.
So if you're providing this service, as you've said, free of charge and so on, obviously there's a question. And the question is, there's something in it for you. What's in it for you? How does XPERI make this? What's the business model?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we license access to the API to car manufacturers. It's a very similar model to our HD radio business, where we license, in that case, intellectual property and software to the car companies. And that's resulted in over 100 million cars deployed just in the US. We're now looking at this service, as I mentioned before, it really solves a design and receiver production challenge for the industry, allows them to build one radio, have massive economies of scale, and deploy that radio anywhere in the world. So it's a very good value exchange. We get paid a little bit of money from the car manufacturer for each car, and then that car is able to access our system for the life of that vehicle. So it's a very good business model for us, for the broadcasters, and for the car companies.
Absolutely. Christian, so when you think about, I mean, one of the things Joe said earlier is he's relying on people like you and Pierre to start poking holes and saying, what about this? Can we do this? He also talked about the long list every time they present this. What's on your long list? What do you want to see happen as we look 2-3 years out with this technology? What are you looking for?
Yeah, that's always a hard question. Yeah, what we mostly are interested in is learning what set of people uses certain contents. So the combination of a certain characteristics of an audience or a segmentation of the audience and the used content. And then to be able to change that combination is the let's say most desired form of data we would like to get. And at this point, we get a more anonymous listener, but with more and more granular data about the usage and the listening. But he would like to know more about the people behind the dashboard, and not necessarily about the specific person. So we don't need to know that it's this man or this woman, but more segmented data about this person is let's say, the long-term goal.
And what about you, Pia, as somebody who supports a big team of driving commercial people going out there and doing the marketing to make sure that radio gets more than its fair share, if possible, or gets its fair share, because I think none of us are getting that at the moment. What do you see? What's on your wish list?
So
which Joe will deliver by Christmas, right? Because he's got the beard and everything.
Yeah. Have to be patient. All this stuff takes time. But I mentioned it at the top of the broadcast, is that overall, radio doesn't need another audience measurement system. What radio needs is solutions that can prove impact. And so because DTS AutoStage knows the minute-by-minute tuning that's happening, because DTS AutoStage knows the location of the vehicle, and because they know what ads were being played, they have the ability over time to say exposure to the ad caused people to go to this store. And I think that is the holy grail, the ability to use this data set to prove impact of radio advertising. And that to me is the ultimate long-term benefit here, because you need a giant sample to do that. And obviously they're on their way with the manufacturers that they've announced and a lot more that are waiting in the wings. But that's the real benefit, is to prove impact and show the relationship between ad exposure and retail visitation.
Absolutely. That feed, close the loop.
Yes, exactly.
Message goes out. Did someone listen and do something and act on it? Yeah, absolutely. That's the holy grail. No doubt about it. Joe, looking forward. I was remembering that companies like Waze and others that are already on our screens are monetizing in interesting ways. I get in my car, I say I want to go to a particular place, and I constantly get flashes up of places to go to, a restaurant. The KFC's around the corner, 300 meters, turn left. Sometimes it's quite irritating, actually, because I'm not interested in the KFC at the time, so it's not particularly smart. Is that sort of deployment something that becomes possible with this technology, perhaps smarter than the way it's currently being done by others?
Yes, but I think there's a story around how we're going to get there. I think if you look at the technology today, it's purely anonymized broadcast. Companies like Q Interactive are helping with the production and distribution of those enhanced ads that you're describing, which really are the foundation of any kind of opportunity. So I encourage people to look into that company if they're looking to enhance their advertising. What you described, though, with the individual understanding, or the understanding of the individual, will require a certain level of permission and opting in that we don't currently have deployed. We're moving in that direction primarily to support radio and audio recommendations. So much like on your Netflix or even Spotify, because they understand so much about you, they're able to curate and offer up recommendations for media for you to consume. We're moving in that direction as well. As you know, we merged with TiVo about 18 months ago. They have tremendous institutional knowledge around how to make that happen. And we're deploying that now around audio in the car. So working with our automotive partners, we're dealing with all of the infrastructure and identity systems that are required to enable that. That's kind of the carrot. You're going to share with us more information about your listening habits in exchange for a more curated, meaningful audio experience in the car. Once we get all those foundational components in place and the permission and consent from the driver, then we can start to look at this advertising model that you described with Waze. I think as a user of Waze, if you ever read the terms and conditions, you might be horrified, but you have made that value exchange decision. They're going to know where I am every step of the day so that they can tell me what's the fastest route to get from point A to point B. We're looking at the same kind of value exchange. We're not there yet. We expect to be there in the next 12 to 18 months.
And does this mean, when we look at where you're taking this through the technology and how rich FM becomes, how beautifully it renders on a screen, why is there ever going to be the need for an FM tuner? I mean, Pierre, what's the need for an FM tuner? Is there any need for it?
Well, look, you still need to go from one station to the other. I mean, I think the cool thing about the carousel view that DTS AutoStage has is you're kind of like swiping across the screen, and so look, there's still a lot of older vehicles out there that need that tuner. But I think this notion of recommendation, I think, is very exciting, because in many countries there are HD additional stations that are kind of the in-between stations, and this will make those stations more prominent. And we know from audience data that people spend like 60% of their time with their favorite station, about 20 or 30% of the time with their second favorite station, and then it drops off pretty quickly. So the actual number of stations people listen to is pretty small. So I think what this will do is give recommendations and suggestions that might open up, more radio listening. And the other thing that is like a down the line thing that Joe has talked about is on-demand content. So if you think about listening to your favorite station, you get in the car, you get in the morning, and you want to know latest news, latest traffic, weather report, etc. There is going to be an opportunity with DTS AutoStage to have, when you get to that station, to hit an on-demand button and hear instantly the latest weather forecast, the latest traffic report, of course, sponsored and brought to you by, and the latest newscast. And we are in a world where on-demand content is becoming the norm, thanks to Netflix and others. So I think this will allow broadcasters new revenue opportunities to offer these sponsored, on-demand content.
And potentially all of it voice activated as well, I would think. But go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize something about your question, the need for a tuner. You cannot underestimate the power of the economics of broadcast, the immediacy of broadcast, and probably most importantly, the reliability of broadcast. While the IP networks are evolving and we're using it for all kinds of services and media right now, broadcast is a global platform. And as you go from country to country, even cross a border in Europe, you're going to see the reliability of the cellular infrastructure is going to be dramatically different. And in some cases, even the economics for the user are going to be dramatically different. So, I get this question all the time. When is the tuner coming out of the car? Certainly, I don't believe it's coming out of my lifetime. And we do have the benefit of working with car companies on their product roadmaps 5, 7, 10 years into the future. I think there's a robust future for broadcast radio in the car. Will it change? What's going to happen to AM? How fast is everyone going to transition to DAB only or HD radio all digital? Those questions are being asked, but it's very rare that we get asked by a car company, when can I take the tuner out of the car? So I wouldn't worry about broadcast right now, but I would challenge everyone to continue to innovate take advantage of AutoStage, because what that will ensure is that the audience still engages with radio, that radio is a competitive, multimedia rich user experience, like what the users are becoming accustomed to with pure play digital platforms.
Yeah, and just a data point that I think is important in this country. Edison is kind of the leading audio measurement company, and they have a study called Share of Ear, and they do it in a bunch of countries. If you look at in-car AM/FM, broadcast AM/FM share of all audio, everything going on in the car is a 60 share. And the next thing underneath is in single digits. So AM/FM is the dominant audio platform in the car. But if you then ask the Edison data, well, show me ad-supported shares. Show me listening in the car to anything that takes an ad. So that would be an audio streaming service that's ad-supported, podcasting, maybe a satellite service that takes advertising. AM/FM share of ad-supported radio audio in the car is an 89 share. So 90% of all tuning to ad-supported platforms in the car is to AM/FM. And by the way, that number 6 years ago was 90%. It's 90% now. So the dominance and the strength of ad-supported AM/FM in the car it's stunning.
That is very, very good information for those who are watching, who are worried about what that future path or what the highway looks like. Christian, is it the same in Germany? I think you have a share of your study in Germany as well, if I might be wrong.
Yes, we do a lot with Edison here in Germany as well. The numbers are a bit lower traditionally in Germany. People tend to commute a little bit less because everything's a bit smaller. Scale is a bit smaller, but it's still the dominating audio source in the car. And it's also, as Pierre pointed out, the most robust space for radio. We see, of course, a decline across all platforms, but literally not in radio use, in auto usage. And that's apparently the place where radio is really resilient and stays for a very long time.
And I think that just powerfully resonates with everyone why the XPS, why the XPERI solution makes so much sense, because that is, as you say, continues to be a resilient place, a place that is resilient in terms of radio listening. There might be other options available, but it still commands the majority of people's attention, which is exciting news. We're going to round up. If you've got any final comments, and I just gentlemen, if I may say, you guys have done such an amazing job. Nobody's asked any questions. Now, we've had questions in the other panels, which means you've kind of dealt with most of the things they've wanted to know. So congratulations. You all deserve a pat on the back. Give yourselves one after this, after the session's over. But if you want any final comments before we round up, Joe, let's start with you.
I would just encourage broadcasters to visit us at XPERI.com to learn more about how your stations can get involved if you're not already involved. And look for us at the RevTech Summit and at Radio Days Europe.
Christian?
Yeah, as I just said, let's defend the audio space in car for radio. It's not our last resort, but it's really resilient, and let's make it smart. And I'm almost doing a testimonial here, but I would everyone encouraged to use platforms like the XPERI platform in order to learn more about this place, which is probably the most important space for audio in the future.
Pierre?
Yeah, I would talk to the engineering folks at your station and get them to log into that XPERI portal and do the three things: upload your logo, give them your streaming URL, and then give them access to your programming system so they know the title and the artist and the name of the commercials that are being played.
You saw a comment just now flash up on screen from Zane Derbyshire, one of those who are watching, and said, indeed, everything has been answered. So you guys have done an amazing job. Congratulations. Well done. And from Laura Ivy, incredible, exciting advancements for in-car listening. Thank you for the session. So people have been definitely benefited from your wisdom today, gentlemen. Thank you to Joe D'Angelo, Senior Vice President, Broadcast and Digital Audio at XPERI. Christian Schult, the Chief Digital Officer at RTL Deutschland, Germany. Same thing. Pierre Bouvard, Chief Insights Officer at Cumulus Media in the United States. Really appreciate your time. And just again, for those of you watching who want a taste more of what XPERI can do, how the technology continues to evolve apart from XPERI.com, Chief Executives Only, or C-Suite Only, the RedTech Summit, 25 seats. If you'd like to join, team@redtech.pro, let us know. But of course, it's a bit of a lottery. We choose at the end. Not everybody's going to be able to get in, but it's going to be a privileged event at a chateau outside Paris. Send us why we should have you there if you'd like to be there. XPERI are certainly there. Many others are there. Pierre may join. He's got this look on his face that says, I want to be there, but whether he can, I don't know. But thank you so much for your time, everyone, and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you, XPERI, for this brilliant session.
Thank you, everyone.